Okay, so good morning to these guys, all of you that have joined. We're just going to give it probably a minute or two just to settle in on this really chunky webinar today that we're going to try and squeeze in 45 minutes. The Feminine and Masculine Divine Energy in Love and Relationships webinar. So I want to welcome all of you to the webinar because this is not an easy one, because as you all know, a lot of our life gets influenced by our relationships. So relationships as in love relationships and relationships to people, our parents, our siblings, our bosses, whatever, all relationships. But today I'm specifically going to talk more in terms of our partnerships and our romantic relationships and love, because I think that's where our wounds turn up the most. So I'm just going to start by just sharing my screen with you. I'm just going to show you where we begin with this. So I designed this little thing because for me it kind of what everyone sees as the Yin Yang, which is the Taoist theory or belief about duality, two things. So it's like in each part of the whole, there's a little bit of the other, and they work in masculine and feminine energy, yin being the feminine and yang being the masculine energy. But ultimately, it comes from the original image, which actually is called the Taijitu. And the first, going really, really far back, probably about 4000 BC, the original one is the one I like the most, actually, which is these beautiful waves. And then the center is empty. That's for the self. So when we look at flow of things, especially in life, and how I got to this divine masculine and feminine energy, the duality, the polarity, it started for me when I saw what this symbol means. And if you think about life, in life we have polarity everywhere, duality, contrast. In where there's one, there's the other. When we have night, it goes to day. When we have winter, we've got summer and autumn and spring. How we move, tides moving in and out, the growth process of something, the birth of something, the death of something. Even in forces, attraction, when you have magnets, the push and the pull of these magnets. And in this symbol, I like the fact that there's one part that is just for us. That's our connection to source, to God, to universe, whatever you want to call that, that feeling, that identity, that connection, whatever your spirituality or belief system is. So when we look at the masculine and feminine, the divine, when we are balanced, when we are in flow, and you'll see this beautiful symbol looks like it's like a wave or like the ocean moving. It's not a static thing. So we tend to do this when we're working within the energy. We're sometimes tipping into one or the other side. And what I think is the more you focus on intentionally creating that balance, that's, I think, where the magic happens. And I'll talk about questions as well. I'm just admitting someone. We're just going to talk about the questions as well of why do we get out of balance? So the Taijitu from the Taoist mean everything has a counter opposite. Where there is light, there is dark. And they break down the yin and yang energy, the masculine and feminine energy. They break it down as in the masculine energy is the warm, like the sun, where the feminine is the moon, where the one is very fiery, the other one's very flowy. So it's almost like even thousands of years ago in different religions and spiritualities, they were thinking the same stuff that we're thinking even now, thousands and thousands of years. So people, it's a journey. It's a whole life journey for all of us. So the people were thinking about it then, and we are still thinking about it now. And the thing before I'm going to do a little poll, I wanted to show you is the next one, which is something that for me is one of it's like a beautiful Cherokee quote. I love the Cherokee tribe, and I think they've got such wisdom. I'm not sure if you can see it with my little head, maybe blocking some of it. I'm going to be reading it to you. So they believe in these two things, two duties, two roles, two dualities of love and relationships. And they say, A woman's highest calling is to lead a man to his soul so as to unite him with source, guiding him to source, connection, highest purpose, greater good. Her lowest calling is to seduce, okay? And we know that women have power in sexuality to be able to seduce, but seduction isn't guiding to source. It's actually separating man from his soul and leaves him aimlessly wandering. And then a man's highest calling, beautiful, is to protect women. So she is free. These words are just very, very powerful. So she's free to walk the earth unharmed. Powerful, powerful words. One of my favorite words, unharmed. She's not harmed physically. She's not harmed spiritually. She's not harmed emotionally, mentally. So when you are allowing, when a man's highest calling is to protect the woman so she's unharmed, she can lead him to source. It's this beautiful mix that they're doing. But a man's lowest calling is to ambush and force his way into the life of a woman. This can be through deceiving her, through pretending to be something that is not, to ambush, to capture her in an unsafe space, attract her in an unsafe space. If you think about the wounded side of masculinity, players, things like that, but you also get the players in women, the seduction, the seducers. So those energies are, again, the polarity of the divine masculine and feminine. In the wounded feminine, she becomes the seductress, destroying and taking a man away from his connection. And in the man's wounded masculine energy, he will ambush and force. He will make her feel unsafe. So I want to now just make sure you're all on the page there. So we're going to do a little poll for me to just connect with you guys better and to see a little bit where you are. Now, this poll is just to give you a little bit of insight into yourself. So you'll see that you can probably see which side it's on, whether it's divine masculine or divine feminine or in between. Now, you'll want to go, oh, I want to get brownie points here, either for yourself or for whoever, but it's an anonymous poll, by the way, guys. You're not going to know who said what. But I want you to answer it truthfully, like really honestly, like to yourself. Who are you in the relationship? What do you really do? So we can see where everyone's at. So I'm not going to know who said what, but you guys will be able to basically see the poll. And afterwards, we can see what was answered, but not who answered it. I'm just going to start, see if I can just share that with you guys quickly. Okay, so it's just 5 quick questions. I hope it's popping up on your screens. Just if someone can just let me know if it's not on your screen. It says relationship, feminine, masculine energy. And I want you to just go through these questions on your own and really feel like, who are you? You know, this is going to be such a nice opening up of who you are as a person. So you can start answering those things now. We're just going to take a few minutes to see who you are, which side you're on, and are we all seeing the quiz, the poll? Maybe like another minute to just go in there. And I'll also tell you which ones I am, so you can get an insight into me. In an argument, do you mostly want to resolve immediately, want to take a break and walk away? Not me. Want resolution. I am actually in my masculine. I want to resolve it now. I'm that person who walks behind someone going, bah, 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 but what did you mean when you said that? And they go, I'm not talking to you right now. I need to calm down. I go, well, we're not calming down right now. We're going to discuss this right now. So I've had to learn in relationships when to negotiate the time. Sometimes it is right now, and sometimes I have to wait until someone calms down. And do you mostly see your partner as reliable? Okay. I don't have a partner right now, but what I would like to see is reliable, dependable, strong, safe, and trustworthy. That you can see is the strong masculine. The more feminine side of masculinity, depending on who you are choosing as a partner, would be caring, emotionally available, and affectionate. But you kind of want both, right? You kind of want a bit of both. What I tend to get is either of the bottom two. I've had very aggressive, confrontational, controlling, sociopathic partners or partner. And I've also had more passive, more emotional, insecure partners as well. Who organizes? Again, me and my masculine. I always organize. Hey, let's do this. Hey, let's plan this. Hey, let's go away. But what I want is actually more of the masculine energy to kick in. Who wants the relationship to want sex more? Not usually me. I think initially when we have the chemistry of attraction, that's great. But I'm definitely not the initiator in my relationships. I tend to take a back seat. I go into my wounded feminine because I've passed pain. Who in the relationship is the happiest? It was always maybe a bit of both. It was me, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to just end the poll, and then I'm going to let you guys see the results. So I'm sharing the results now. So out of the 6 people, 4 people answered, and there's the majority. Actually, sometimes I want resolution and sometimes I walk away. That's the balance, right? That's what we're aiming for. And again, if I had to answer, I would have been resolved immediately. So I'm there with someone else, and then there's one person who walks away. That's the feminine, right? The flight. You have the fight, which is what I do, and then you have the flight. And then do you mostly see your partner as? So if you're in partnerships, and even if you're single now, when you are in a partnership, see, here it's amazing. Each person had something different that they are, how they see their partner out of everyone. So we can see why relationships are so complicated, because we all want and need different things. In your relationship, okay, this is pretty 50-50, but the partners are doing quite poorly here in terms of organizing stuff, which would actually read a little bit. It says partners both share equally. That's good. But just partners doing it, as in all of our men are doing it actively and we're all sitting back, or in the partnership, whether whatever gender or sexuality is, the other person that is on the other side is your partner, if they're taking the lead or not. So it's pretty 50-50 there, which is interesting. In a relationship, who wants? Ooh, again, tipping towards more 50-50. That's amazing. For the people out there who's both equally, you guys are pretty balanced. And who in a relationship is happiest? Okay, this is interesting. I like that there's people here who've been quite honest and said that their partner is the happiest and they're not thriving. Because the people are saying we're both happy and blissful in relationship. You guys are the lucky ones, right? I'll stop sharing that now and just close that down. Okay, so hopefully, so you don't have to answer the questions if you're not in a relationship, but just to give you a perspective as to what it would feel like even if you are choosing stuff. So when I talk about the question that came up, when we meet someone, right, it's all magic. It's like amazing. The falling in love, all of that, the initial stages, most of the time. But I think even if I had to look at some of my relationships, not all of the relationships that I get that initial, especially the last relationship I was in, based on my past, I specifically didn't choose the in-love hormones. And I'll discuss that in a second. But what I wanted to say is, if we take more innocent love, original love, before we got damaged, before we got tainted, before we got cheated on or rejected or abandoned or abused or whatever it is, before that, when we start as young teenagers and young adults falling in love, what we are looking for is that attraction, that chemistry, that moment where you catch someone's eye, they catch your eye, there's a smile, there's a connection, right? That connection and that attraction that you are feeling is an opportunity. It's life giving you and inviting you to an opportunity. And in that moment, we choose. Am I going to reciprocate or am I going to withdraw? And that's where relationships begin. That's the little seed that gets birthed, because it takes both people sending signals, and then ultimately someone's got to make a move. In the dynamic of the masculine and feminine, whoever is in their dominant drive is going to make the first move, right? So you're going to have someone making eye contact, someone reciprocating, mutual smiling, and then someone's got to be brave enough to either walk up to someone, ask something, request something, initiate something, create more conversation. And that comes from the masculine divine energy, the action-based driven energy. And what makes relationships balanced is the other person is then in the receiving, and then you have this beautiful flow of give and take. So in the beginning of relationships, we are presenting our greatest version and potential of our truest energy. So look at who you are in your relationships. Are you the pursuer or are you the receiver? Now, generally in heterosexual couples, it'll be the male because they're stepping into their divine male energy, which is taking the action, and the feminine would be receiving and saying, I'm allowing you into my space and I receive you. So it depends on who you are within the relationship. And even it doesn't really matter what sexuality you are. There's a dynamic of someone taking action and someone receiving that. So it doesn't have to just be in heterosexuality. It can be in all genders and all sexualities. So you'll feel that there's one person directing more. And then what we ideally want is for this beautiful dance to continue. What happens in relationships are they are beautiful catalysts to sort out our shit, to bring our stuff up, right? And boy, do they bring up stuff. Insecurities, vulnerabilities, past trauma. Can I be loved in this way? Who do I need to be in order for me to be loved? Our wounds, right? Our childhood wounds, which we talked about in the previous webinars, the masculine and feminine, where we see our lineage or our parental guidance or the people that shape and form our society, the world, friends, ourselves. And in those experiences, we might feel, I'm not lovable. So then when we're after the hormones of this beautiful dance of falling in love happens. So falling in love creates ridiculous amounts of oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, all the happy, good, feel good bonding hormones are sky high. You are high on the most lovely hormones in your body. It feels good, and we crave that. Once that happens, then as the initial period starts to wane, we can't stay in that state forever because it actually influences our brain structure. We can't focus on things. So we've all been in love, I hope, or maybe people still are falling in love. But when we fall in love, we actually feel almost taken over by this wonderful, you can't stop thinking about this person. They're always on your mind, and you can't really think about work, and you're not really eating, and we can't stay there. We'd be super unproductive in life if we just stayed in love forever. But yet we crave it. So the moment that the beautiful hormones subside to allow us to see the person for who they truly are, that's when our stuff kicks in. That's when our wounds come. And that's when we start going into polarity. And when we start doing that, if we don't do self-care and see and notice that we're doing it, it's going to start putting strain on the relationship over time. The idea is to keep bringing ourselves back to the center, to work on ourselves, to notice, hey, I'm stepping into my aggressive, very wounded masculine energy because suddenly someone made me feel unloved. They ignored me, or they rejected me, or I wanted to spend time with them. And that comes from wounded insecurities, right? If we are fully secure in who we are and someone says, hey, I can't see you this week, and I'm talking about initially in the beginnings of when people get together, or even in a relationship, like you've been married for 5 years and every Saturday he goes and plays golf or whatever, hangs out with his friends and goes biking or whatever, or your other partner, she's hanging out shopping or hanging out with friends or at the gym. When these things happen and you start feeling your wounds are the things that are your belief systems about life. See, they don't love me. They don't want to spend time with me, which is utter BS. It's not that they don't want to spend time with you. They just also have a life. But be careful of when that person starts using that as a tool to avoid. So it can be something, it's very tricky to start seeing when it becomes abusive and when it's just this person being part of who they are. Ideally, we want two beautiful individuals co-creating in the relationship and not being codependent on each other for happiness and love and joy. So when you're in this initial attraction, the out of balance happens when something gets triggered for us that reminds us of previous pain we felt. And it's an opportunity to, as a couple, transcend that pain, not to help and uncover and fix. There's no fixing. We're not broken. There's no fixing to do. But to support your partner through their growth in that trauma. Relationships are beautiful support systems to do that. But sometimes what happens is it triggers unlovability, not good enough. They don't like who I am. I'm not the right weight. I'm not the right height. Maybe I should dye my hair, or maybe I need to gym more and become more buff and big and strong. So the moment it triggers our insecurity, we start pulling. We're pulling into our wounded side to bring out our defense. Whoever our defense is, if our defense is the divine masculine in its wounded form, it's going to be cold, analytical, logical, cut off from emotion. And if we go into our wounded feminine, it's going to be depression, anxiety, insecurity, poor me, everything is wrong, I'm never good enough for you, you'll never be happy with me, why did you choose me, jealousy, all of those things. So when we kick into our wounds, instead of bringing the wound to the relationship saying, you know what's come up for me is that when you do this, I feel insecure, like I'm unlovable. And for the partner to then say how they're experiencing it from a beautiful external perspective, not to fix you, to give you insight, to hold the space for you to transcend that, to work through that issue. But now if we go into either of our polarities, what do you think happens to our partner if we aren't working on ourselves continuously? The partner tips into their side. So the moment one person becomes aggressive and confrontational, the other person goes into wounded. How are you? Why are you always attacking me? Why can I never do anything right? You never hear, and why are you always out? And so this is where we get conflict and confrontation, right? And then you'll see it as in the questionnaire, one person will want to resolve it now. We're talking about it now. This is happening now. What happened? Why did you do this now? And the other person is like, I'm not going to talk to you right now. I need some space. I need to go out. I need to go and get in my car. I need to take a walk on the beach. I'm going to the shop, or just shutting the door, right? So there's the wounded, and then we go into the extreme wounded versions of these energies. So, okay, what do we do about that? First, we notice that we have these internal belief systems about love, and to identify them and to really sit in meditation, in journaling, in prayer, and sit with, I have a wound that says no one will ever stay. That's a wound. No one. I'll meet people and have great relationships, but they're never going to stay. Abandonment, right? Abandonment's quite a big one for a lot of people. Or you have someone says, I'm never good enough. I'm never going to be thin enough, rich enough, good looking enough, physically good enough, big enough to have someone like this. Someone like this, your ideal partner who you really, really want, I'll never have them. I'll never be able to have them because look at me. I can't have these people in my life. And we tend to then drop down into a different view of who we choose as partners. We don't choose the people we really want or the people we really think we deserve, because we don't really ultimately think we deserve them. So we go for someone who's going to help us to lift this wound to the surface so we can heal it. And sometimes we marry these people. Sometimes we marry someone who brings out these things continuously. But you need a sense of maturity. In relationships, I think the biggest challenge is having partners that are not on the same page. And when I see relationships that do work and that people are, it's because on a spiritual level, they're on the same page. They're both working on themselves. They both know they have these wounds. No one's pointing fingers and blaming the other person or blaming their past or blaming their parents. We take full accountability and say, regardless of my upbringing, regardless of what my parents did, regardless of the abuse I suffered, regardless of this, regardless of the wounds that I believe I'm unlovable and I'm not worthy of having the best relationship, the beautiful person who's loving and kind and affectionate and strong and I can't have that. Everyone else can, but I can't have that. They acknowledge that those wounds are theirs. No one gave you these wounds. We had an experience, and our interpretation of the experience created our belief system, and they're totally unique. So why do we have these things? Why do relationships have these incredible challenges that keep coming up? It's so that we, as humanity, can figure it out, because there's so many of us. And when we all figure it out in a way, we can connect to the greater consciousness. We take all of that information that we process and learn, whether it works out and doesn't work out. We get these beautiful experiences and we send it out energetically into the greater consciousness. So there's been studies been done. There's one about the monkeys on the islands. I'm not going to talk about that, but you can go and research or Google it. Monkeys learning how to use tools on one island, another island they didn't know, but they just suddenly learned the knowledge from this one island of monkeys. It's an interesting study. So when we expand, when we learn something, when we transcend something, we do it for all. So part of our purpose is to be able to choose. So whether you choose to be with someone working out your stuff or do it as an individual. Currently, I'm not with a partner and I am still working on my stuff. And I think sometimes what is a good thing is a lot of people tend to cross over while they're still in one relationship. The fear of not finding someone else, they'll start another relationship just in case and then go like, which one looks the best? Let me choose. Okay, no, that one's out, this one's in, for fear of being alone. The fear of not having someone. Where I always speak to my clients and I say, if you break up with someone, take out at least 6 months of self-healing, 6 months of looking and saying, what wounds came up for me? Is it my, I'll never find love? Is it that everyone else is going to find their great partner? I'm not. Or I'm amazing, but I'm not really sexual in a relationship. So I'm never going to be that person in a relationship. Because sex is actually how we create capacity for more love. And it's a vital key in a relationship, but it's one of the things that actually starts disappearing over time, and is also a reflection of how vulnerable you think you can be in a relationship. Because sometimes we get a stalemate where we're kind of like stuck in a state where it's not really happening. Sometimes it's happening, but no one's talking about it. People are ignoring it. No one's communicating about it. It's just this elephant in the room when people stop having intimacy and connection, right? And when that starts happening, people start, there's a friendship connection, but the attraction connection kind of separates a little bit. So there's different growth. You're going to become really, really amazing friends, but the chemistry, the sexual attraction, and the potential to build a deeper bond is put on the back burner. And I think in a relationship, I've done that a lot. I've definitely had relationships where in the beginning it's all great, it's all amazing when you're in love, and everyone's presenting their best side. So it's easy. Everyone's at their best. Everyone's looking great. Everyone's hasn't got hang-ups and no one's snapping yet. And everyone's just like, amazing. Oh, I love your music. Oh, I love eating raw sushi. Oh, meanwhile, it's like, oh, I'm compromising some boundaries. And I think this is where relationships bring up challenges, is when there are boundaries that we walk across, avoid, red flags, we ignore, because we are so desperate to hang on to that feeling good. Someone's loving me, someone cares about me. And that deep, hollow feeling is suddenly temporarily filled. But the moment that person just becomes who they are and their toenail clippings are lying in the bath, or your leg hair shavings are in the bath, or your makeup's everywhere, or knickers on the floor, or wet towels, or not taking the dishes, or leaving old food out on the counter, when all that stuff starts happening, right? When the veil of in love starts disappearing and we see the true person, we have to realize that this is an opportunity to get to know someone at a deeper level, to accept them for who they are. But what tends to happen is a lot of us then go, I don't like it that you leave wet towels on the floor. And where we were in love, I tolerated it and ignored it and was just like, oh no, it doesn't bother me at all. Now it becomes the thing that annoys you the most. And the moment resentment builds up in relationships, it's a killer. The moment you start resenting your partner for something, spending too much time at work, spending too much money on clothes, not cooking dinner properly or making the food, not looking after the kids with you, not earning enough, being too weak, being too passive, not initiating sex at odd times of the day. When we have these experiences and we don't communicate because we are so scared of losing the person or upsetting the person that we internalize that anger and it builds into resentment, which breaks connection. When people say, oh, I miss connection with my partner, what they're actually saying is that they're missing connection with source, because that hollow feeling, no one really can fill. The drugs can fill it initially when we're in love, but the drugs are going to go. The oxytocin is going to dwindle. It's going to get less. We're never going to get it at the extremes that we get it when we fall in love. So when we realize this is now an opportunity for me to really work through my stuff in a co-creation with another human being, and I'm going to be a support system for their transformation and transcending their patterns, it becomes more two people on the same team instead of opposing forces. It's more of a balance. You're not fighting each other, standing in opposition, judging. You did it. No, you are like this. Oh, it's because you are like this that I'm like this. When that dissipates and you start realizing, listen, this person is going to do this. They are going to have their own opinion. They are going to do things differently to how I want it. I can either communicate it in a beautiful and loving way and we can discuss it. And that needs emotional maturity. I'm going to put that as a disclaimer. Emotional maturity gives the relationship that growth. The moment partners are immature or insecure, it's going to be conflict and tension. But these things are all choices. It's your choice how you work through it. And I think a lot of what happens these days is it's very, very easy to scatter. It's very easy to give up. It's very easy to walk away because it can sometimes become extremely painful and toxic in a relationship when you've not worked on yourself or you are working and the other person isn't working on themselves. So the gap between the two of you are getting so big. And you can invite this person to go to therapy or work on themselves or meditate or go away or do something. If that person's choice is not to do that, there's not much you can do to force them. Each person's free will, who they become, who they are within the relationship. But relationships do trigger our deepest insecurities. So how can we resolve that? First, work on your wounds. What are your insecurities? Where do they come from? How did I get the insecurity that everyone leaves? No one stays. I'm not good enough to have love. The whole world can have love. I don't need anyone. Big one for me. I don't need anyone. I'm amazing on my own. I have my own space. I earn my own money. I look after my kids on my own. Do. So how did that work out for me? Well, I'm on my own. Okay, so I proved my biggest wound. And why I'm having these webinars is I don't want those wounds for me to change their existence. I want to have co-creation. I want to have partnerships, maybe not in the same existence as I did before because of pain. And I hope I can get back to that naive, beautiful young girl who still believed in getting married and staying together forever. But I think I look at relationships now more as tools of personal growth and spiritual growth for me. And that's just me. But I kind of talked about a lot of stuff, and I think I'll probably have another talk about this in a different way. But I want to open the floor to anyone who wants to ask or connect or give me feedback on what you've experienced so far. We've got 10 minutes left of the session. And I think it's a nice time for anyone who wants to just speak about how this has resonated. How do you see yourself in the relationship? Are you in the wounded? And is your partner in their wounded? I, for instance, had a relationship where I was so in my dominant masculine, controlling, confrontational, aggressive, that my partner stepped totally into victimhood, insecurity, poor me, and that made both of us not feel very good. And so the relationship didn't really end out in a healthy way. It needs both people working on their stuff. is there any questions or any feedback that you guys want to give me? You can type in the thank you. Great so far. Awesome. So you can just do in a chat, or you can unmute yourself if you want to. But if you unmute yourself, you're probably going to go onto the screen your name. Or so if you want to stay anonymous, you can just post at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There'll be a little button that either says chat, or you have to click more and then chat, and it'll bring up the chat window. So essentially what I think is the reason relationships go into breakdown so often is because we don't recognize what energy we are pushing into. We don't recognize the wound. And when we don't recognize what wound it is, we automatically go into our protective version of ourselves. And when we first realize the wound through looking and saying, what am I feeling here? I'm feeling insecurity. Why am I feeling insecure when my partner is just being themselves? Where in my life have I felt insecure before? Where does this come from? And what is so interesting, when I work with my clients and we do regression therapy and we take them back to inner child, you start seeing where things come from. For instance, when we look at we talked about it before, the masculine and feminine energy, in terms of masculine being the worth and the feminine being the love, our first primary caregivers giving us these two gifts. I remember when I did my hypnotherapy course in Cambridge, and a memory that came up for me, a memory that my sister will also probably remember, or maybe not. But I remember sitting in the bathroom. It's probably 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We were living in the Transvaal. There was an orange window in the bathroom. So this beautiful, warm orange light came in. And I always had this thing about getting my hair wet. I absolutely hated it. I hated it. I made a big, massive scene. And we had a domestic lady who helped us, who was a live-in domestic lady, Hester. And she was giving us a bath. And I was like, no, you're getting my hair wet. And I'm freaking out in this memory, this regression memory. And then there's a moment, I'm sitting in the bath with my sister. And in this moment, my mom walks through the door. And in this therapy session, what it said to me is that, why is my mom not giving me the bath? Now, I'm talking now about a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old perception of the reality of the world. Why is Hester giving us a bath? The reality was my mom's cooking in the kitchen. My perception was, she doesn't love me. And she doesn't love me because I'm screaming and shouting. Because I'm an angry person. I'm an angry child. My mom doesn't want to spend time with me. And so I had this split happening. I became almost sad and wounded, and actually more angry and snappy, and hated the hair thing more. But also it was a way of getting my mom's attention. I was getting her to come in. I got her time. I got her love. I got her seeing me. And in that wounded, I made up, if my mom can't love me, then no one can. And actually anger became one of my biggest challenges in all of my relationships. So it's something I'm still actually working on. I've just got a few questions here. How to learn to be intimate, have strong resistance in getting close. Intimacy, including sexuality, is where we are totally separated from the ego, or should be separated from the ego. The ego is our identity, who we think we are versus who we truly are. And so it's a projection. It's a protection and a projection of who we are. And our ego comes out to defend us and then sends us into one of our polarities. When we can't be, or we struggle to have intimacy, there's actually wounds deeper to do with safety. There's a point in your life where you felt unsafe. Something happened to you to make you feel unsafe in the energy that it has wounded you. So that could be coming from masculine energy or feminine energy. In my case, I interpreted it from the feminine energy. I'm not lovable, but this could also be from a wound from masculine energy. I find a lot of women that have, and men actually, that have had sexual abuse, sexual molestation, where something traumatized the safety of sexuality. It's easy to shut down. It's easy to disconnect from sexuality. It's easy then also just to step into physical body instead of vulnerability, connection, intimacy, kissing, hugging, all of the stuff. I mean, I find it hard in my own relationships as well. Initially, it's great, but like after year 3, French kissing, it's really difficult for me. It's because I haven't worked on my wound of security. I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe with this person. I don't trust this person. Maybe this person has lied. Maybe this person has betrayed you. Maybe this person isn't who they are. Maybe this person isn't as masculine as you need them to be attracted to them. Because attraction, remember, there's a difference between partnership in a relationship and attraction. Attraction is that chemistry, that sexual chemistry. And for sexual chemistry to work, it's got to be a super, super, super balanced masculine, strong protector, masculine energy needs to be in its most beautiful side. Very safe, very protective, very masculine. That makes it attractive. If your man or your partner steps into their wounded and they are weak and they're insecure and they're not feeling good about themselves, or they're not driven, or they're not ambitious, or they're not manly, or they're not feminine, or they're not, instead of being soft and feminine like the woman should be, beautiful and mysterious and alluring and sensual and sexual, women is afraid and fearful and insecure and jealous, and that's also not attractive. So attraction happens when we're in our most beautiful, closest to the balance of attraction energy. And attraction energy, because we start getting into our wounds, we separate from that middle and we go into our sides. So what you want to do is the more work you do on yourself, healing your own wounds, and the stronger you get back into your own energy, whether that's feminine or masculine, the closer you are to your purest, most beautiful, balanced version of yourself, that'll draw the attraction back into the relationship. And hopefully the sex comes with that. I hope that's answered a little bit of that. I'm just going to touch, because there's one more question I hope to squeeze in. How can we encourage more masculine and feminine energy in our partners when it is needed? If they are stepping into insecure masculine, for example, how do we bring them back to balance? What would be the most appropriate way to understand? The best way is to leave them. You need to step into, if they're going into wounded masculine, so they're becoming controlling, or if they're stepping into their feminine energy, if a man who's supposed to be strong and emotionally available and safe and protecting and providing, and he's driven and he's ambitious and he's strong and he feels good and he has sexual energy there, right? If he's like suddenly not doing well at business, not working, not making money, not feeling good about himself, not taking care of himself, is feeling bad and poor me and life sucks and I'm never good enough and I can never get what I want. If they're very far into their feminine, you can't become stronger in your masculine thinking that's going to trigger them. That's like the worst thing, but that tends to what happens. Well, if you're not going to be earning the money, I'll be earning the money. If you're not looking after the kids, I'll be looking after the kids. If you don't want to organize these things, I'll take care of the house. And suddenly the woman might start stepping so far into her masculine energy that this is the dynamic of the relationship. So what you can do, only you can do this for yourself, is to get back to your most balanced feminine. Where have you become hard, cold, action-based, confrontational, interrogative? Why are you doing this? What happened? Where have you been? All of that energy is not feminine. It's not flow. It's not present. It's all future-based. What's going to happen in the future? Feminine energy says that person needs to find their own way back to the center. Sometimes the closer you come, the more you become authentic in your energy. And especially in your specific question, if your partner is stepping into their wounded and you need them to get out of their victimhood, there's no way of talking to them, explaining to them, asking them. They're not going to do it directed by you. What brings the magnets together, what brings the energy together, what brings you back into being attracted to each other is when you go closer to your purest version of who you meant to be. You step into flow, into presence, into meditation, into beauty, into attraction, into loving your body, sensual, feeling, sensing, using the senses, moving, dancing, music, water. All of those elements are going to, regardless of where that person is, that is you anyway healing your wounds. And then you can work on yourself to present. And then at that point, when you're feeling you're at your purest, most beautiful version of your feminine energy to bring that person into their masculine. If they don't, then you have to ask yourself, is this person doing what they should be doing in the relationship? Is this person mature enough on the spiritual level that you are, committed in a way to you and to the relationship that they should be? Are they turning up in the relationship that they should. And then in the most loving way to say, hey, I've noticed that when I'm in this version, it triggers you into that space. How does that make you feel? Communication. And communication is the thing we always hop on about, but it is actually very essential because communication comes from a place of connection, wanting to resolve, and not an argument, more noticing. But first, the work starts with you. If the balance is out, first heal your own balance. Notice whether healing your balance, becoming softer with yourself, becoming softer in the relationship. But you've also got to ask yourself, are you at a stalemate? And are you at a stalemate because you don't want the relationship and you're actually sabotaging it from a point of, I don't need anyone like me? Well, if this doesn't work out, I don't need them anyway, so they can go. So I tend to not want to work stuff out because I know the end result is going to be I'm on my own. So first I need to work on my wound of I don't need anyone. And I don't need anyone came from a place of not feeling safe in the masculine energy. They're not safe, they're not reliable, they're not trustworthy. So those beliefs first need to be healed for me before I can step closer into my feminine. I'm still a very protective masculine energy. My wounds are still there and I'm still working on these wounds. And this is my choice why I'm not currently in a relationship, because it's quite a lot of work I want to do in myself before I step. I want to be the greatest version of myself when I present myself to someone, not as a fake, hey, falling in love version of myself here. Hey, here's all the glitzy, and I'm leaving all my wounds in the background going like, don't look there, just don't look there. No, look here. No, haha, I'm smiley, I'm good, we like it, this is fun. And then leaving my stuff. What I want to bring is most of the stuff sorted, although it's a lifetime of sorting, but to know what my stuff is and for the person to know from the beginning what my stuff is so they know what they're dealing with. Red flags are signs of the things to come in the relationship that says, do you want to deal with this later on? For instance, lying. Red flag comes up, person's deceitful. You get it and you're so in love, you go, doesn't really matter. I don't care that he's lying about not being at work at the right time or not being with his friend or being at the bar when they said. So the red flag comes up as an opportunity to say, this is going to come up as a challenge in the relationship. Do you want it? Do you want this experience? And then we kind of go like, oxytocin says, don't look there, just say yes. And then we kind of just do it anyway. So I think what we need to become mindful is to take more time, especially in the beginning of relationships, to get to know someone. And even if you are in a relationship right now, to reinvest yourself back into getting to know that person and seeing where are they at the moment? Who are they? How can I discover them at a deeper level? How can I be closer to my center? To have my own masculine and divine energy beautifully. Because when those energies are really beautifully balanced, incredibly powerful things can happen in relationships. You can actually sort things out. You can create more love and you can send that all into the collective consciousness. So I've gone a little bit over time. I'm sorry, guys, but it was, like I said, quite a chock and block session. I might have another session if people are still interested. I hope we can go deeper into this because for me, this is really close to my heart, to healing relationship wounds, because I've suffered through relationships way too much, and it doesn't need to be like that. And I want to find a really nice way for the masculine and feminine to connect again and create some magic on this planet. It's a beautiful empire of love. So I want to thank all of you. The recording is going to be placed onto Facebook. If you guys want to join me, in my Empire of Love, which is the place where I connect with people. I send out special offers, more workshops. I'm going to start doing some retreats where people are going to be able to work with me one-on-one on retreats, doing meditation and journaling and stuff like that. If anyone's interested in that, you go to my website. I'll also put it in the message group. It's www.nadiabrand.com/join. So if anyone wants to do that, so it's my website, nadiabrand.com/join, and you'll join my mailing list. And my mailing list, well, you'll always get notified about the webinars and stuff like that. I've also got a private Facebook group, Empire of Love. It's a private group, but you can message me or you can email me and I can send you an invitation to the group. And that's where I get a group together of people who are really like-minded on this journey of healing relationships, and not just relationships with each other, but relationship to connection, to source, to God, to themselves, so we can be greater versions of ourselves. So I want to really thank each and every one of you for being here for you, because this is actually what you're doing. You're stepping into learning more about yourself, loving yourself. This is an act of self-love, and it reinforces that you are valuable, beautiful, precious, amazing, like a little snowflake. and that you guys, so thank you for supporting me and coming on these webinars. I really enjoy sharing this information with you, and I hope you all have a super spectacular day. So you can all log off if you want, you can say hello if you want, but the session is now complete. Thank you, you guys. I hope you have a super day in your balance.
Yeah, that was awesome. We loved it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.